may change, but from what it looks like, it's pretty much stabilized, and there might be some things added, but most likely things won't actually change between now and then, but you never know. Again, this is to install. We need to use the EPEL, which is an external set of packages that you can use on CentOS, and that'll give us the libical development package that we need to build this functionality on CentOS. So this is just from essentially the default configuration file for the calendar.conf. So what we're doing here is we're telling it what the type is, and caldav is the Google type, but you can also use iCal or Exchange. The URL that has the calendar information, which is essentially the iCal file. How we're going to connect to obtain that, which is my username and my password, which is not actually welcome. And the refresh time, which is basically how often to refresh the information from the server, and how much information to pull at each refresh time. So instead of pulling like 3 days worth, you don't really need to have all that information in the server. I just pull the next hour worth of time, and I could just refresh that, every 60 minutes. Although in this case it's seconds, because Terry was testing and he wanted to be in seconds, but I made a suggestion that both of these should either be seconds or both of these should be or minutes, and most likely they'll just end up being minutes. So from the command line interface, we have calendar show calendar, which is the command, and asterisk -gcal, which is what I configured here. Asterisk gcal is the name of the calendar I've set up here, and I could have multiple calendars set up for each person in the office if I wanted. So what this is showing me is the event that it has pulled and is storing in memory. So what it's showing here is a summary, which is, I called it meeting. And in the description, I have these 3 fields. So X100, which is, these are just things that I made up. The asterisk has no concept of what X100 is, or P, which is for a phone number, etc. This is just for me to allow parsing in the dial plan, which I'll get into here in a minute. Then I have the organizer and the conference, which is the location. So I'm going to call conference 6060. And these are all just standard fields in the Google Calendar. So very simple first part. When a call comes in, basically what it's doing is using a function that's provided by the calendar, which is checking the status of the calendar, which is calendar busy is the function name. And it's returning either a 1 or a 0, which is saying 1 for busy and 0 for not busy. In this case, at this line here, the status is set to 1, and then I'm checking with a goToIf that says if it's 1, then send it to voicemail. In this case, I was busy when I called in, and it just shoots it off to voicemail as opposed to calling me first. So this is how I did it. Call comes in, someone dials extension 100 on my dial plan. I set the value of what calendar busy function gets back on the calendar that I'm looking at. Basically check, is the status set to 1? If it is, go to voicemail, which is down here. Otherwise, it would just fall through to the next priority line, which would then dial my phone, and then play back silence, and then again, it would just go to the voicemail, just the same way that it would normally happen. So all I'm doing is skipping this middle spot here for the playback, or sorry, for the dial. So something I came up with because I've been meaning to do it and I wanted to because I thought it'd be fun would be to have the system automatically call participants. So this line here in the description where I set X100 for dial an extension, P to call a phone number, or D for a device, which is just on my local system, I basically set the first character so that I could tell what I was going to call. And then what we did in the calendar.conf file is allow the ability to automatically call a part of a channel, which could be just a phone. So I could just have it call a phone directly. But in my case, I made it call a local channel, which basically says instead of calling a device, call a portion of the dial plan, perform some dial plan logic, and then do whatever the dial plan logic says when the busy status comes up. So created this in about 40 minutes or something. And I'll try to go through it quickly. But basically what it's doing is getting some information back about the conference here and determining if the first value that I set was to auto call, which basically is going to tell the dial plan, hey, you should, for this event, automatically call some people. And so I go through and I create a loop here that is basically, here's my check for whether it's an extension, a phone, or a device. And depending on what the first character is, it's going to go through and determine whether I should call an extension on my database. And I'm just looking up some information of how to call that extension out of my local AskDB. And then over here I have it, it's going to call a phone number. So I just say, here's how I'm going to call out, which is my a global variable I've set, which is basically the ITSP, so unlimitel, for example, that I'm going to call out on, and the phone number. This originate is really the big key, because it's saying call that phone number, for example, and connect it to the Meet Me conference, which is a conference room, and which conference number, which is information I pulled out of the calendar information. And basically it's going to loop through, and for each iteration through here, it's going to check to see if there's another field, and when it runs out of fields, then it's basically just going to hang up and it'll just say it's all done. Questions thus far? Did I really confuse everyone, or hopefully I'm not probably going a little fast, but if you have any questions after you've kind of reviewed this, feel free to shoot me an email, because I know there's a lot of stuff going on here for the period of time that I have to talk. So one of the things I did find out here was that I couldn't actually use a local channel to keep iterating through. The Originate application did work, but when you're doing testing and you have this great idea, sometimes you run into an issue and you have to go and figure out a different way of getting it solved. So haven't decided whether that's a bug or if that's just the way that Asterisk is going to work. We'll kind of have to figure it out as we go, but that's one of the things I came into. Questions on calendar? Okay. Curl is what I use this for. I came up with an idea to basically pull information off of a website, which basically is going to be a PHP script, and I'm going to pass it some information via a get method, and it's going to basically do some looking up out of a CSV file that's going to say, hey, when I'm calling Barbados, or I'm calling and somewhere in Western Europe, it's basically going to look up from the phone number I dialed, keep cutting off numbers off the back of it until it finds basically the extension, like the first part of the phone number. When it matches one of those, it's basically going to return back what the rate is for that phone call. So now I can track when a call is going out. I can say, well, this call, at the end of the call, lasted 5 minutes, and because it was 10 cents a minute, cost me 50 cents. So you could expand that out to being like a least cost routing engine. So if you had multiple routes, you could pull all that information back, loop through. Hey, this provider has, I can call London, England for 12 cents a minute. This one's 5 cents a minute, and the other one is 1.1 cents a minute. And obviously, I'll take the cheapest route. So I created a PHP script. I won't go into it because I've already inundated you with lots of stuff. But there's basically the curl example I came up with is there. It would actually have to be tweaked for you to put into production because it's a little slow. It can take upwards of 2 seconds to do a lookup. Not the most ideal. Probably fix it with caching things, but worked well enough for the demo I wanted to do here. Use the dial plant, the curl function here, which is actually going to parse the information from the website. This is really the key here of the format. I pass it the URL, which is leifmadsen.com/rate lookup, and then the information I want to pass to it, which is really just the phone number. So here's the URL. Basically, I'm calling this server, index.php, and just passing it a variable that's called number and the phone number I'm calling. The result that I'm getting back off the web server, which just posts to a website, essentially, I could even type this in myself and I would get this back. And Asterisk this is what it's going to read off the website. So it's the first, format here is Canada 647, and then the area code is 647. The rate is 1.1 cents a minute, and Oh, the other two numbers here is just how